And so, Craig, first and foremost, I'm really grateful you're able to lend me some of your time today to talk about the things you're interested in, talk about you, and share your story. So, thank you very much for joining the show.
My pleasure. I'm happy to be here. Excited to chat about all the cool things I used to do.
Awesome. Sounds good. Works for me. So, let's dive into it then. For people who might not know you, kind of take me through a bit about yourself and your transition specifically, like leaving high school, that time frame. Or we could even start a bit earlier, because what people might not know is that when we did our little Instagram video call before our icebreaker chat there a week ago, you
Mhm.
mentioned you have some things you not rants specifically, let's call them, but things you want to say on about high school from your experience. So let's
Uh,
take us through.
yeah, I mean, so I'm old. Er. I graduated from high school back in 2004, so maybe things have changed a bit since then. But
Right.
yeah, I mean, so in high school, I did everything I was told. Was a swimmer, basically focused all my time into swimming and academics, which I don't think was a bad decision, but I think I sacrificed and missed out on a lot and probably didn't have, I won't say normal, but like the conventional experience that you might see elsewhere, other people have had,
Right.
especially like being in America. It's in the US, I think I think there were things I learned that were great, but then I think there was a lot of things about high school that just stifled creativity and my growth as a
Uh,
person.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I was, hardcore into swimming. My goal was just get into a good college. So it was always grades and swimming. And basically, I didn't party. I did nothing else but homework and swim. I met a lot of great people. I don't
Yeah.
necessarily regret it, but I don't think I explored areas of my life that I probably should have at the time.
Right.
And not anything bad. It's a decision I made at the time, but looking back on it, I would have put in so much less effort because like being in National Honor Society, getting straight A's, like
Yeah.
none of it really mattered in the end. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
think now I would have maybe ended up in the same place, maybe ended up somewhere way better because I would have explored something that is not, traditionally seen as like a stable career. Maybe I would have been an artist. I don't know. Maybe I would have done something else, but I was always told, no, you become a doctor, a lawyer, accountant,
Yeah.
have a stable career, get into a good school and everything will be great. And I'm not saying it hasn't been. I've been very lucky.
Hmm.
A lot of hard work, but very lucky, a lot of sacrifice. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, I just look back and like, man, I wish I did worse. I wish I didn't care as much. Like, I wish I
Yeah.
explored things I wasn't good at, because who knows where it would have taken you. Um,
Right.
yeah.
Interesting, man. Do you have how do you think it hindered like your creative side when you were younger?
I mean,
Like
like
the
high
system,
school
we'll call it.
specifically, like, you're the whole goal, at least in my high school. I didn't go to private, I went to public school.
Okay.
Um, uh, Going through it, like from day one, even before that, it was always about you need to get good grades so you can get into a good school so you can
Yeah.
get a good job. And I was
That was the
taught to be like a docile worker for other people to exploit and get rich off of, if that makes sense. I
it
was not
does.
taught
Yeah.
to be a free thinker. I was taught to memorize stuff, to get good grades on a test, to get into a school, to learn how to work hard so someone else can make a lot of money. And
Fair.
looking back on it, I'm like, I'm sure, I'm sure I've had good ideas and bad ideas just like anyone else. But because it was like so ingrained in me, and it's not
Mhm.
lots of people have gone through the experience
Right.
and have taken risks, but for me, it made me so risk averse that like I just am too scared to make the jump into something
Yeah.
like less stable or more risky. And I think high school it was the area to explore that and start to develop that type of mindset. And I chose the stable, performance driven path, and it served me well. But I feel like there's a piece of my life missing as a result of it at the same time.
Interesting. So I want to circle back to that, but can you kind of take me through like why swimming? Like why was that your your other thing? Because I found a lot of people like they experiment with sports and we do different things, but why was that your like this is the one that I could focus on?
Yeah, I mean, so growing up, I played every sport, not football, but American football. I played soccer or football. I played lacrosse. I loved it. I ran track. I did most of those things. I played baseball for a long time as well. I was
Nice.
a catcher. I enjoyed it. And then I started swimming pretty late. I started when I was like 13, 12 or 13,
Oh,
which in the swimming world, that you're pretty late to the party
that's late,
at
yeah.
that point. But I worked hard and I just was decent at it. Like things came together and I started, getting better and better and moving up the ranks and, went from one team, which is like a great starter team, to another team, to really like hone in your abilities, and your skill set. And I just kind of got good at it. Not great, not Olympics, but good enough to swim for, Division 1 for collegiate,
Mhm.
collegiately. And when you're good at something, you just want to keep doing it because it feels good.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's almost saying it's easy, but it's easy when it feels good and the
Hmm.
motivation is there. And there was something about it, like it was such a grind, right? There's no rewards, there's no money in swimming. So you're really
No,
doing it for your own intrinsic uh intrinsic rewards and intrinsic value. And I
right.
loved going best times. I loved when a coach would throw a set at me that like people would be crying over. And like my goal is just like grind it out and prove them wrong. And I think that was what drew me to it. Um, but it's super time consuming. Like you did mornings before
Yeah.
school, then you had practice after school, then you had meets all weekends, like
Yeah.
every weekend, and tried to do homework and school in between. So it wasn't
Good
a lot
luck.
of a lot of space
Yeah.
for anything else. But I think it's any sport you get really good at, you go down that rabbit hole and you pick the one you're good at, the one that gets you the best opportunity to set yourself apart to get into the college you want.
Yeah.
And I think that was it. I was drawn to the grind, but I was decent at it, and it was there to serve a purpose.
Right on. Do you think sorry, what I want to know, where'd you I can't quite remember where it was, but where'd you go to like university?
I went to Boston College.
Oh, okay, right on. Nice. What was that experience like?
It was good. I mean, like I said, I met some awesome people throughout my swim career
Yeah.
that I've stayed in touch with my swim friends more than any other group of friends. So
Man.
like it's I think it's that bonding over suffering, right?
Oh,
You're up,
absolutely.
you're
Yeah.
up super early in the morning and you're you're tired all the time, you're cranky, you're starving, like you just form a bond with those people, and those are who you like choose to spend all your time with, not who you get paired up on a project with in school. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I swam collegiately. It's definitely not like a top program in the country by any means.
Right.
When I went, it wasn't scholarship for men. It had a female the women's team was on scholarship.
Well,
I think it may have changed now. I think there might be some men's scholarships. I'm not 100% sure at this point, but we were a decent program. But when you don't have scholarships, you don't recruit the same athletes, and the people who
uh
are there for academics, not to become famous swimmers. And I was very realistic. I knew I wasn't going to be like, you
yeah.
know, Michael Phelps or anyone of that
Yeah.
stature.
It's
And I
no
knew,
Florida State,
yeah,
like
yeah,
or
exactly.
Berkeley.
No, they're not They're not the Gators or like ASU or any of the Stanford.
Yeah. There's some stacked teams though. Geez.
Yeah. So like
Jeez.
legit teams. So when I was in college, my sophomore year, we had moved from the Big East to the ACC. So we went from schools like on our level,
Yeah.
FSU and like Clemson, and like they would come to our pool and like meet after meet, they would destroy our record board, and they would bring like their B team. Like their A team was swimming like
Man.
Harvard and stuff, and they bring their B team to swim against us, and they would just destroy us. Like, which is fine because you're watching, like they are Olympians, a lot of them, and you're watching and you're
Yeah,
just,
most of them.
God, like our jaws are on the floor watching them go that fast, and like the coach is like, pull your shit together, like they're just swimmers, like it's like, yeah, they're freaking awesome swimmers.
Yeah, pull your shit together, coach.
Yeah, like
Like,
coach us up, man, come on.
oh
Have some
man.
pride.
Yeah.
So it was really cool, like it was a lot of work. definitely like high school, you have a lot more, I'm sorry, college, you have a lot more freedom and flexibility with your time. You're not
Yeah.
in school, 6, 7, 8 hours. So you can balance your time better, do other things. But with swimming, even for a non-scholarship program, there's a huge time commitment. And then
Mhm.
even though like the NCAA has like their rules, you're still doing extra stuff on the side of,
Yeah.
they're not required workouts, but you're doing the strength training. You have all your swim workouts, you have your meets, you still have homework, you still have classes you have to get to. So it's still like it was a large time commitment and a lot of sacrifice. And when I look back, as much as like I loved swimming and getting better, the best times I had in college was when the swim season was over for like the 2 months. So like, swimming started in September,
Yeah.
ended in March. So basically April and a little of May were awesome. I like loved it and I had fun, and that's when I like had fun and just enjoyed college. So it was like 4 years of college. Really, the only time I felt like I was in college was like 6 weeks a year. So,
Jeez.
so
Yeah,
you just have a very different experience than I
that's
think
hilarious.
as other people. So again, I don't regret swimming. I think it was
Yeah.
great, but I might have done it differently looking back on it too. Like, because I definitely, if you're going to put that much time into something, it's coming from somewhere else. So,
Right. You got to take from one thing to like, yeah, you kind of have to balance things a bit
right.
differently,
And
especially if you try to do a multitude of things.
yeah. And like in my junior year, I started getting into triathlon,
Yeah.
a year of college. I started getting triathlon and did my first season. And then my year after, when I graduated, I kind of went all in on triathlon, really enjoyed it, loved it. My first 2 years of my freshman and sophomore year, I was doing more marathon swimming. So like I went from marathon swimming, like putting all my time into it, to branching out into something else. And like I started to really enjoy the community around triathlon. And this is at a time when triathlon
Hmm.
was like really starting to boom. So it wasn't like quite its beginnings. It's not what it is now, but it was like that growth period.
Oh, right
You
on.
had like a lot of interest, but you didn't have all this social media crap happening where like now social media is like the worst thing to happen to sports, because the people who are getting sponsored in these fringe sports are not good athletes.
No,
And
they
they're
suck.
taking it, and they're taking away from the people who like legitimately should be looked at as
Yeah.
like role
It's just a
models for people.
personality thing, right? It's like the drawing the eyeballs. It's very, very, it's a weird, weird thing.
Right. So like it made,
Yeah.
so at the time it was great because it wasn't about Facebook, and like those things barely
Yeah.
were anything at that point. They were 2, 3 years into their existence. So it was like literally people in certain schools had access to Facebook and no one else did. Right. So
Yeah.
it's a totally different world. You were just doing it to do it and like feel something cool versus getting a cool selfie or video for your reels and,
Right.
showing the world like I'm awesome, I'm great, like I'm doing
Yeah.
this triathlon. And so it was fun at the time, met cool people, but I think ultimately like swimming kept me involved in swim related sports. And
Mhm.
one sport I took up after like a couple of, I want to say maybe 2 or 3 years after college was jujitsu.
Yeah.
Um, and I wish I had done that when I was in college or high school.
Everybody says that when it's like, oh man, I wish I would have done this earlier. Yeah,
It's
jujitsu
just such a
specifically. Yeah.
cool sport,
Yeah.
You do it as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I've been
You
happening
know,
just shy of 5 years, about 5 years now, but like
nice.
consistently 5 years.
Yeah, and it's like not because I wish I did it so I'd be better today or be a black belt today.
Sure.
More just like I really like it. The
Yeah.
community
Yeah.
is awesome, the workout, the skill set, like everything about it is great. Especially like because I was drawn to swimming, so like that grind aspect of swimming. I love
Yeah.
jujitsu because like my style, like anyone I roll, like they're just like it's just like a grind it out. It's not a pretty
Yeah.
flow. It's like
It's
no, no,
not a
he's out there
flow.
working.
Yeah.
If I didn't wear headgear, my ears would be like ripped off my head at this point, the way I
Yeah.
roll. um,
Jeez.
but yeah,
Amazing.
I just stuck to what I was decent at. I was a good runner, a good swimmer. Biking is easy. You just stick your feet in the pedals and it does the job.
That's
Um,
it.
so I was like, I was doing what I was good at, not what I sucked at that I enjoyed. So,
Right.
so looking back, I'm like, man, I would have loved to have done jujitsu back in college, right? Like for a
Yeah.
lot of reasons. But I think there's a confidence that comes with it. I'm sure when you
Oh,
started,
yeah.
like you get all these people like, you're like, oh, I could kill these people. I could, I'm so tough. Like what I'm saying before you've started jujitsu, you have this mindset. Everyone has this mindset of like, oh man, I'm so tough. I'm so strong. I could rip this person's head off. And then you do jujitsu and like you go on your first day and like this like tiny 110-pound person comes and like rips your head off. You're like, what just happened? And then as you get better and those tough like football players and bodybuilders
you become that person. Yeah.
Exactly. You're the one like, and you're not even being mean about it. You're just like tossing around like, man, remember how like how falsely confident you were before? And then like now I don't look at, I have this confidence, like I could take care of myself in a bad situation.
Yeah.
Not that I want one, but it's like a totally different confidence where you walk into a room and you're just not scared of anyone.
Yeah, it's weird, but you're not like, you don't think about it actively.
Right. Exactly.
Like, you can walk in and just not be concerned, not need to size anything up, not need to be like, you're kind of like, okay, I'm aware of the room I'm in, but I'm not really concerned as to what's like might happen. I'm not like, okay, if that guy does it, it's like, I'm not anxious or paranoid because I don't need to be. It's like whatever the outcome could be, it's like, we got this. We've figured it out. We've been through difficult things. We've suffered, and it's it's a good time. It's one of those. I think jiu-jitsu. I've overheard this on this one clip, and I'll send it to you after because I give context. But the piece that I took away from it too was it's this guy who says some along the lines of like jiu-jitsu is a hobby for people who are okay with being shitty at something.
Yep.
Yeah.
I heard that same exact one. It was like, yeah, jiu-jitsu is the sport for people who are okay with sucking.
Okay with sucking at something. Yeah.
And like dead on, because even when I think as you go up the ranks, you just still suck, and you're always looking at the people who are better.
I'm just way less shittier than I used to be.
Right.
Which is like, it's a me path. It's like, I might or might not be better than like this person, but I know I'm like better than what I used to be.
Yep. Better than I was yesterday.
It's a weird thing. But so with jiu-jitsu though, I found it's a skill, because I want to tie this into with a question I have about the triathlon and endurance training. But jiu-jitsu is one of those things where it's like, how do you get better at jiu-jitsu? Do more jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Right. So now in terms of triathlons, is it the similar idea where it's if you do more triathlons, you do better at triathlons? Or is there one thing that stands out of the three, the cycling, the running, and the swimming, that is more worth the time? Because I know that cycling doesn't help your running versus running helping your cycling.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if there's one thing to focus on.
Yeah. So like it depends, right? Like it depends what you're good at, what you're not good at. The interesting thing, because I've coached triathletes, and like now since I've done like the English Channel marathon swims, and I've been doing marathon swimming for so long, I've shifted my focus there, but I still have a few triathletes. And like the biggest thing I've seen over the years with triathletes that I've coached, I didn't have to suffer with it, is the swim, right? Like bike and run fitness don't do anything for your swim. No. But they build up this confidence, like, oh, I can run a marathon, so I can swim a quarter mile. And people like wait till like 2 weeks, 3 weeks before their first race, and they get in and like they can't even make it to the other end of a pool, let alone doing a quarter mile in the open water where there's no bottom, there's nothing, no wall.
Open water is a different beast.
It's totally different. So that's the one thing, like advice wise, when I get triathletes, I'm like, if you're new to the sport and you don't have swim experience, like you need to start swimming 6 months before your first race, because it's not just the fitness. You need to learn the technique, and it's very subtle. It's not gross motor movements, right?
No,
like,
small, weird shoulder movements, like shoulders get pinched.
Like small tweaks here and there change everything. Whereas like jujitsu, there are like nuances. Like if you do it for a cross collar and like just doing this with your wrist, like tweaking your wrist like a certain way, sink the choke in deeper. And of course, that's good to know. But if you're strong and you have good deep grips, you're going to get that choke either way.
Yeah.
Whereas with swimming, it's like if you don't get the subtle nuances of it, like you're not going to get the timing.
No, you're going to get injured or something. Yeah.
So I would say the swimming is like the piece. They get this overconfidence, like, oh, I can do marathon, I can bike 100 miles, but they can't swim. Yeah. And then they literally have the worst experience of their life on the shortest part of the triathlon, destroys their entire experience, because maybe they get through it successfully, but they're huffing and puffing and like they're gonna die, and they got to
Yeah.
recover on the bike to have a decent run. So I think it's the swimming. But people hate swimming. People hate sucking at things.
Yeah.
That's the biggest deterrent, is they don't want to get in because they're delaying like that experience of not being good at something.
Hmm.
And that's what I've seen is like where people fall short in triathlons is they don't give the swim the time it deserves.
Right.
Not to say that like biking and running aren't important, but if you can't do all three decent, it's just going to be a bad day.
Yeah, it doesn't sound too inviting. Like, and I was lucky enough, like my like small triathlon experience, and my I always found in like just kind of growing up until like after high school, then I kind of stopped doing those type of things. But what happened, I found, is afterwards, it was if I didn't have swimming experience, everything didn't piece together well. And then
Yep.
just the whole nothing flowed, nothing really worked. And then just, yeah, like you said, just to reiterate, yeah, it was
Yeah.
trying to catch up just to have enough energy to make it through the run, not even be strategic, like tactical about how you're going to do it, the
Yeah.
race. So,
But to your point, it's true because like you'll do your first triathlon and you messed up literally everything you could mess up.
yeah,
And then you do your second one and it's like 15 minutes faster. And then you do your third one. So like it's true that doing triathlon more makes you better because
right.
you learn from your mistakes. But at a certain point, it plateaus. And then it's literally just
Yeah,
about going back and doing the things like the fundamentals that you didn't do like early on in your training.
right. No, that makes sense. So in terms of your swimming career, like so you're a triple crown swimmer, correct? That's not wrong. Okay, sweet. So can you maybe explain for people what that is before we jump into it?
Sure. Yeah. So like in open water swimming, there is an achievement that is pretty it's not common. It's getting more notoriety as swimming, open water swimming and marathon swimming gets bigger and bigger. But it's basically you do the 20-ish miles across the Catalina Channel from Catalina Island to mainland California. It is a swim around Manhattan. So it's a 28.5 mile circumnavigation of the island of Manhattan in New York. And then it's the third swim, but not in any particular order, is the English Channel, which is like 21 miles, but it's probably the worst of the three, the most difficult of the three for a
Yeah,
variety of reasons. But they all have their challenges. So basically, it's completing all three is considered the triple crown of open water swimming.
nice. So with that, do you have a like lesson you learned from any of the three from like achieving that triple crown from any of them? Like one lesson and then one like favorite moment that stood out to you from the whole three
Yeah, I
swim
mean,
experience.
I think in terms of lessons, like, and again, I think this is why I not regrets, but like this is why I look back at high school and college, be like, I wish I did it differently.
Right.
But I think the lesson I learned, especially with the English Channel. So, just for some context, my English Channel happened in 2020 when the world shut down,
Yeah.
right? So, like
Yeah, it's
20 March,
recent.
yeah. So March of 2020, COVID comes. I was on like one of the last flights out from San Diego to Boston because I had just done my qualifying swim for the English Channel. So like I'm
Right.
literally I'm at this empty airport. There's maybe like four of us on the plane. So like I had just done my 6 hour
Yeah.
qualifier. Um and like the world's shutting down. I'm like, oh my God, I gotta get home. It's like across the country. I get home and like the world literally shuts down. I'm like, I get the English Channel this summer and I am not missing it. So at that point, I had to basically like pools were shut down, everything was shut down except for open water.
Hmm.
So and I'm in Boston, so like it's February, almost March. It was like beginning of March, early March.
Yeah.
The water temperature here is still like 38, 39 degrees Fahrenheit. So
Wow.
we're talking about sub 5 degrees Celsius. And I got to find a way to still
Ooh,
train.
bro.
So I got very creative and I was lucky enough to work. I was working remote before COVID.
Yeah.
So not my life didn't actually change at all. But what did change was traffic. So I would get up at like 3 every morning and drive to my parents' house about 40 minutes but there's never traffic either way, which is great because of COVID. And I would either go to the ocean, and I had them open up their pool in the backyard, and I said, don't put the heater on, like just keep it cold. And I would get in the wetsuit, in the water was probably like 45-ish, maybe, so 6-7 degrees Celsius. And I would swim for tethered to to like the stairs, and I would just swim in place for hours until I couldn't handle it anymore. And then I would go to the ocean and try to do some open water swimming and colder stuff. And basically what I learned, like, I just never gave up, right? Like I said in my head, like, keep doing this as if it's going to happen, and like, do not quit, because if things change and I quit in my head, like I'm not going to do the training, the swim's not going to happen, and the world starts opening up and I don't get to do this swim, I now have to wait 2, 3, or 4 years to get another spot. So ultimately, like, I'm not saying it's over, but it's highly unlikely that I'm going to do this ever again. So I think what I learned was, like, when you have a goal, you need to be very committed to it, especially if it's like a big daunting one. So it's like, be committed. Don't let like negative thoughts from others get in your head. Like, just stay the course and trust your training. And, it doesn't always work out. In this case, it worked out because in July, like, so literally I told my family, we have Zoom meet calls and all this stuff. And my family would start talking about COVID, and I would leave the room because I told them, like, I don't want to hear about it. I didn't listen to the news, because if I started letting that get in my head, oh, this isn't going to happen, that's going to
the negativity of it. Yeah.
I would stop training, but this isn't going to happen. And then on July 4th, the UK passed like whatever legislation or rules saying, okay, you can travel into the country as long as you quarantine. That was 2 weeks or 3 weeks from my attempt. So like literally the weekend they opened, I just finished my last long swims.
Wow.
My wife, like, we changed all my flights. We found all new like lodging, and I flew out that week because I had a quarantine for 2 weeks, and then it was my swim window. So like I literally got on a flight at the end of the week by myself, not having crew, not having anything. I'm just like, I'm going and I'll figure it out. And I went, did the quarantine, and I got the swim done,
Amazing.
So like, if I learned anything from any of the swims, it's like, just stay steadfast in your goals, and just like, anyone who's going to be negative, cut them out of your life. Like, I literally stopped talking to people because I'm like, I told you this is important to me. I'm not going to listen to this. I don't want to talk about it. So stop. Like, it's not worth, like, oh, do you think you're going to get to do it? It's like, I am doing it.
It's getting done. It's getting done.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I learned. And it is probably the coolest thing I think I ever have done and might ever do in my life.
Wow. That's awesome. I like that a lot. That's, can you take me through kind of, if somebody doesn't know how to swim the English Channel, but let's pretend, right, for argument's sake, that they have the swim experience, they have the knowledge, they've done a handful of open water swims, and they're like, I want to attack this goal. Take me through like step one to kind of the end of what it would look like, to like getting the right permits, to like the training, like to what that looks like, the timeline.
So the first step, like, once you decide you're going to do it, it's not happening that year. Like, it is, so it's become much more popular. It's usually you're booking your swim date 2 to 3 years out. So like, if you're interested in it, like, I have swimmers like I'm talking to now, like, oh, I want to do it. So I'm like, all right, well, realistically, it's 2025. You could get a spot for 2024, but it's not going to be a good spot because there's like a positioning system that the pilots use, because there's limited swim windows and there's limited boats.
This is crazy. Okay.
And so there's you have slot. So the way the English Channel works is there's the main tides are neap tides and spring tides.
Yes.
Generally, they won't put you on a spring tide because the tidal flow is too strong, and most people won't finish. It tacks on between like 1 and 2 hours to a good swimmer. So if you're not a fast swimmer,
like 4 or 5 hours.
It's not happening.
It's not
like
happening,
you're gonna get a mile off French waters, and you're just gonna swim in place until they pull you. So there's limited number of neap tides during the season, and there's limited number of boats. Every boat will book about 5 slots. And the way it works is, if you get it's a priority system based on first come, first serve.
Right.
If you get P1, so position 1, that means like in that window. So say the window's 5 days. You're never guaranteed to swim because it all depends on weather, but you will get the best day that is swimmable. So P1 is guaranteed the best swimmable day. That means if the weather blows out for the first 4 days, and you go on day 5, P2 through P5 aren't getting to swim because now you're entering someone else's, another 5 people's windows. So the boat captains do their best to like get everyone in that wants to, but like if I were to book for 2024, I'm probably realistically looking at only 4 and 5 spots. So like the chances of you even getting to get in the water go like way down with that. So that's why I say you're looking at 2 years out to book your spot. Then once you book your slot and you got the deposit paid, then it's about training. You train until the year of your swim. The way I have my swimmers train, the way I train is like it's stepping stones, because you don't have to swim 20 miles like before the channel, but you should be doing progressively longer swims. So like I like my swimmers to be targeting either like around a 25-kilometer swim to a 20-mile swim the year before the English Channel. And the reason I do this is because, and I did the same thing. I did Catalina my first year, New York the second year, and then English Channel is my third. The reason I do that is because the training is so time consuming. So before you start sinking tens of thousands of dollars into English Channel, you learn if you even like it, right? Like you learn if that training is for you in that first year for the cheaper swim. You've built a base up. So you have a year of major base under your belt. So you have less likely for injury the following year when you start ramping up volume for the channel. And then you have all this like long swim open water experience where you don't have to think about your nutrition plan. You don't have to think about what you're going to eat, when you're going to eat, how often. You don't have to know who your crew is. You've already trained with your crew. You know how to swim next to a boat. So basically all the hard part for the year of the channel is just about getting the volume in, staying injury free, and getting used to the cold. So like it makes, if you do it right and you have the proper goals, it becomes a far less daunting task, right? Like if you were to say to me, hey, Greg, I want to do the English Channel in 3 years, but I have only swum a mile.
Right.
I would lay out the plan. You would get your first plan, like your first year, and you'd be like, no way. And then as you get further into the plan, you're like, all right, it's baby steps to get there. And then you knock out that swim and you're like, all right, like that was a 6-hour swim. My English Channel is only 6 more hours. So over the course of 2 years, I only have to build endurance to get 6 more hours.
Right.
So less and less daunting as the years go on. You're just like, oh, I got this in the bag. Not in the bag, but like if weather conditions hold, like I've done everything I can do to control that are in my control. And I have a much higher chance of success versus people who, they book it 3 years ago, but then they don't start training until 6 months before the channel. Like, oh, you are in for a rough go. But, it all comes down to how committed you are.
Right. Interesting. So I feel like everything in terms of endurance is compounding, right? Like the more you do it, the more. Now, can we talk about the mental fortitude it takes to be an endurance athlete? Because I think there's something to be said with any like long, because I'm in the process of training for a marathon at the end of May, not swim marathon, but a run marathon. So I understand and I've done like the most I've done in a pool at one time is 2 hours straight of like just swimming.
It's a good amount of time though.
Yeah. I mean, well, I was doing it with our mutual friend, and shout out to him. Matt was training for his swim. It was like in the beginning stages. And I was like, yeah, man, we'll do is to support you for a bit. And then I ended up, and then scheduling just didn't work out. So, but I was swimming while he was swimming for the couple hours. But yeah, so I have an idea of like endurance training and stuff like that. But what I've noticed specifically is like endurance athletes have a mindset or a mental fortitude and mental toughness that I feel it almost can't be taught. Like it has to be like, you just have to go through, or it can be taught, but it can't be like, nobody's just has it. I feel you have to be progressively doing more difficult things or difficult thing for a long period of time in order to build it up. Like, how would you build mental toughness into an athlete?
I mean, I think you're right. Like I've coached swimmers who have it, and then I've coached others who don't. And it's hard to like beat in to like, it's coachable to a degree, because I think you're right. It's that progressive challenge, right? Like I just explained, just like doing, even the marathon, like running a marathon, it's about the coping mechanisms that you create that work for you.
Interesting. Yeah.
So like to
I
me,
like that.
I don't look at it as like a 12-hour swim. I look at it, so I feed every 30 minutes.
Right.
So I just look at it as like, all right, I just got to get to the next feed. Just get to the next feed. So I'm not thinking about, oh my God, I have 20 more feeds to go before I'm done. It's like, just get to the next feed, get some fuel, get a quick stretch, and
Yeah.
then, you talk to your crew for like 2 seconds, gives you that mental reset to just get into it. But it's that progressive challenge because it didn't start that way.
No.
Like I started like everyone else where like, yeah, I'd done like, 2.5 hour, like a 10K, 2.5 hour swim. And I'm like, oh, this is so boring. And then I did a 4-hour swim in the pool. Then I did back-to-back 4-hour swims in the pool. Then I did a 6-hour swim in the pool. Then the water was warm enough. And then it was, 6 hours on the open water, back-to-back days, then 8 hours back-to-back. So it's like that. But if you think about it,
Yeah.
once you do it, you're just like, oh, you look back and like, well, I did 4 hours 4 weeks ago. What's 2 more hours?
Yeah.
Right? So it's not like
Yeah.
I'm not looking at what I have to do. I'm looking at like, what's the next step and where did I come from?
Yeah.
Think about it. I'm only like an hour from where I was a couple weeks ago. So in my head, I was like, that's 2 feet. So I just go feed to feed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what I try to teach swimmers. But by doing those long swims and kind of suffering, that's when you learn those skills because what works for me isn't going to work for you. It might,
Right.
but it might not. Some people think about they're doing it for charity. So they're thinking about, the person that was important in their life and why they're doing it. For me, I was just like really committed to the goal. And it was more about achieving something cool that I could do everything right and still have like a 50% chance of failure. So, to me, I'm like, I'm just going to keep going. I had this in my head. I'm like, there's only 2 ways I'm getting out of this water.
Yeah.
For all the swims, like Catalina, English Channel, 20 years, like either I get pulled out unconscious or I walk out on my own.
Finish.
That's it. Those are the only 2 ways. And that is what I had always said from the start. And, so for me, it's like when I'm going through a rough time, like not every half hour goes well. It's like, gotta ride it out and see where things go. See how you feel in an hour. See how you feel in a half hour. And just think about, going from feed to feed. Because a half hour is a lot easier to chunk up than
it is, yeah.
4 hours.
No, you're right. I think, man, that's always fascinated me. It almost seems like when you kind of like unpack and extrapolate this like big accomplishment, like I look at it as like, especially in the longer it is, the more like minute you have to look at each task. So I'm thinking of like when my buddy and I ran a 25K as our longest run to get up to building it. And then I was just at one point, like 20 kilometers, and like just one foot after another, just one foot after another. Like the first time we were like, okay, we're in uncharted territory right now. So there's a bit of anxiety, right? Like you don't know what your head is going to be telling you. Because it's all like your head is like we've built in safety mechanisms, right? Like I'm sure there's been times that you're like during the actual challenge itself, telling yourself like, no, like can't do this. Like we got like you're like, it's too cold, or I'm too sore, I'm too this, I'm too that. Like you're programming excuses, but it's kind of your brain telling you like, hey man, like we don't know what's on the other side of this. And you kind of have to like almost reel yourself back in and go, no, one stroke after another, one foot in front of the other. Just get to Tuesday. Okay.
Yeah,
it's
super. I mean, really true though, because I think to be any endurance sport, not in any of them, you have to enjoy the process because you're working so hard in the process up to the big day that the big day is not stressful. It's basically like just another day.
Yeah,
like,
it's more relieving.
I've done this a million times. So there's no uncharted territory in the event itself, really. It's all, just in your head and you're just doing it. But like you said, I think that's why I loved the long swims. Like most people be like, oh my God, I gotta do 6 hours next week, in the pool. And I'd be like, all right, I'm gonna do 6 hours in the pool. Like it's gonna test me. Like I'm excited to see the challenges. And then when I finish, I know I'm gonna feel like a different level of confidence in myself. And that's what kept me going, I think, more than anything.
Right. And I find too, I like what you said about the confidence. I feel the confidence comes from achieving
Mhm.
like those things. Like if I've only ran 10K or I've only swam like for like half an hour, my goal when I was first starting was like, okay, I want to add like time in the water. And I went like, I was like, okay, I'll do like half hour straight swimming because it was doing it and finding that like relaxed walking all day pace and then just building that. So it was 30 minutes. Okay, well, now 1 hour.
Yep.
Now, okay. And then the first 15 minutes, I'm like, this is stupid. Like, what are we doing? And then once we get to like, I got to like 20 minutes of having to do a 30. And it's like, well, just like the running, my buddy and I talk about this often, where it's like, once you get to that halfway point, it's like, it's better to just finish than it is to turn around and go back.
Yeah.
It's like you're going to run the same distance, if
Yep.
not less, to finish than you would to just, it's like, we already got to this point, just do it again, double it. Right. So,
Yeah. Oh, the fastest way is through. It's like you get to a
yeah.
certain point, right? Like
Yeah.
you just got to go through it. Yeah. It's interesting, but like it's in terms of like mental fortitude, like at least in swimming, I don't, I've done, I've run a bunch of marathons and qualified for Boston and did Boston. And I don't know, I've always done endurance sports because I'm not big. I'm pretty short and
Yeah.
I'm not built for like, the only thing I have going for me is being, tough and endurance. And
Yeah.
so I've always like been more attracted to sports where like height and certain like physical characteristics
Yeah.
don't matter as much. Like
Right.
nature is the equalizer. But one thing, like especially in swimming, and maybe you've doing this in your running too. Like swimming's super like solitary, right? Even when you're swimming with friends, you're still head in the water most of the time.
Yeah.
Having people around you is motivating and helpful, but you're not talking to them. It's not like going for a run
No,
and talking about your
running's
day.
much better for
I
that.
popped this guy's head off. He didn't tap, but but with swimming, I have like I call it like the brain breaking process. And literally
Interesting.
it's through these long swims that time moves differently, especially in the open
Yeah.
water, right? Like you said,
Interesting.
when I first start my training site, like my start my ramp plan. So say I start in like November, December for a big swim in summer,
Yeah.
my mind isn't like where it needs to be. And it takes a couple of long swims. And like what happens is like a half hour feels super long. But then as I start doing these longer swims and I'm going feed to feed, a half hour goes by in a blink. So
Yeah.
like or 20 minutes of the half hour goes by in a blink. Then I look and I'm like, oh, I get 10 more minutes and I get to stop and feed.
And
Right.
that's every time.
Right. And then like next
Ah,
thing you know,
interesting.
like I get into the open water and I'll go 4 hours and it will fly by. I'm not even thinking about it. Like time just goes,
Yeah.
I'm not bored. I'm nothing. I'm just like, kind of moving with nature and enjoying the swim and the elements and whatnot. And I'm not thinking about it. You hit rough patches where time slows down a lot, like a screeching halt, like when you hit
Yeah.
that wall. But I don't know, like it takes a couple of those long swims where you're literally breaking your brain of its conception of time. And it
Mhm.
no longer feels like long and short. It like just goes by and you don't even think about it. It's really weird.
Yeah.
And I
That's
it's hard to
fascinating though.
explain until you go through it. But I think a lot of marathon swimmers and like, endurance
Yeah.
athletes, 100-mile runs, 50-mile runs, I think they experience that at a certain point. And it's when things are flowing, right?
Hmm.
It's you watch like an Olympian, run track or do a marathon, and they're just like floating. It looks effortless.
Yeah.
That's kind of, I think, where you get to, at least in swimming, when you've reached that point with your mind. It's just effortless, and you're just doing it. You're not thinking, you're just doing
Yeah.
it. So it's interesting.
I like that. I like that a lot. I think there's to it. I remember when Matthew's doing like he did his last like long swim on and it was like 26K or something and like on the last day, right? To complete
Yep.
it. And I was on the boat for that. And what I remember is during the middle of the swim, I'm like popping his head out and we're like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And he's
Yeah.
like, "I just need to look at something that's not darkness.
Yeah.
Like that's not the ground and stuff and whatever." And that was during like the daytime.
Yeah.
Right. So how do you manage to like how does that mental stuff like how does like the resiliency and stuff like that to the endurance training like how does that differ like what's the difference between doing it during the day and during night? Is it still all same systems apply or is it just get over the fact that it's dark out?
Yeah. Um, It's different. So I don't know. For me, I was never afraid of night swimming. Some
Right.
people like panicking, like they just can't. They're super strong swimmers,
Yeah.
like, and they just can't do a night swim. Like they're thinking about what's swimming beneath them. They won't see it coming. And like Catalina, for example, everyone starts at 10 or 11 p.m. at night, and you swim through the night. That's how you do the Catalina Channel. So, and
Yeah.
that's a very well-known area for, great whites and
Yeah. Sharks.
other marine life. And like the thought, you just got to kind of put the thought in your head. And I'm just like, all right, the odds of a shark attack are so minimal. Like normally, right? And I'm thinking I got a boat next to me, I got a kayak, or I have a support swimmer. So like I'm just trying to you put the thoughts behind your head. English Channel, I think that the concern about of marine life is less because there's no real sharks in the channel. So, when you take that out, you're not as nervous. It's like, yeah, whatever, it's
Yeah.
fine. But I think it's just about practicing. I think for all my marathon swimmers, I make them do night swims at least 2 or 3 times. One is the anxiety. Some people freak out and they don't like it. And it's just about putting that fear aside and just telling yourself nothing's going to happen. I have my kayak or I have my lights on. People are watching me. So like I think there's that aspect. And I've swum in some gnarly places where marine life is very apparent. Like you're seeing, the seals barking on shore and like swimming under you, and you're seeing
Amazing.
big shadows. You don't know what it is. Like I've been there and I don't love it. It's kind of exciting, but yeah, I'm like, ugh.
I don't love it.
You got to kind of put that fear behind you,
Yeah.
just focus on what you're doing. Cause like in that moment, like when I did Catalina, there's bioluminescence. So I'm focusing as I'm pulling, I'm seeing the water light up from like the bioluminescence. And,
Wow.
but one thing about night swimming that's really interesting, at least for me, is your body behaves differently at night. When you are normally swimming, right? I'm sorry, when you're normally sleeping,
Sleeping. Yeah.
you're forcing your body to swim. So even if you sleep during the day, your body is still not used to being awake all night doing this activity in cold water. So, like when you get tired, you get cold. That
Mm.
happens. Like that just happens. You're not tired, but your
It's the
body,
way your body's
right? So your body is you're feeling cold, and then you get in your head like, oh my God, I have hypothermia. I'm only an hour into the swim. What am I going to do? And you're not actually hypothermic and you're not actually
ah,
cold. It's just your body doing what it always does.
interesting.
So I make people do night swims so that they are aware. One, they're comfortable, but two, they're aware of that phenomenon or sensation where, look,
That's
you
weird.
just tell yourself, I'm not going to die. I'm not hypothermic. I'm not actually cold. So just keep pushing through. Because once the sun comes up, you're 6 hours, 7 hours into the swim, but the sun comes up and like it's a totally different swim. Like you have this, you're exhausted, but the sun comes up and you have this newfound energy that comes from nowhere. You're just like, oh my God, it's a new swim. I feel great. Like I'm ready.
Uh,
It's just like really weird, but you have to learn how to like put fear behind you and just know like educate yourself. I educated myself on like sharks and feeding patterns
yeah.
and all that. In my head, I'm like, dude, this isn't happening. Like
Yeah.
nothing is going to happen to me. Like the sharks feed like on shore at certain times because they're seals, and I'm in the middle of the channel when those times occur. So like I'm not worried. It's
I'm not where they are.
yeah, I'm not where
Yeah.
they are. They're not interested in me because I'm the same size or bigger than it. So there's like a lot of, when you
Mhm.
educate yourself on your fear, you can put a lot of it to the side and get over it pretty, I don't want to say easily, but a lot easier than if you are completely ignorant to how that fear actually works, right? Like
Right.
for me, it's marine life or sharks, like anyone
Yeah.
else. But once you know how they feed, when they feed, where they feed, and then I also think about like, dude, like 500 people have done Catalina, and there's never been a shark attack, so odds are pretty low, like that I'm going to get eaten by a shark, you know. And if I do, what a
Yeah.
great story.
Yeah. It's not bad.
Yeah.
Like that's cool.
Yeah.
So what I found too is like when I talked to Lynn Cox about that same like similar issue in terms of like just in terms of the preparing, but then also like, well, how do you deal with all these things that might just be in the water? Right. And the biggest thing was exactly like verbatim what you just said. It's like research.
Yeah.
You let your imagination roll, and then that's like the biggest thing you can do to work against yourself. It's like just research, know what's out there. You have the facts, you have the information, you have the access to it. figure all that out, and then it's actually a lot, like you calm yourself down a bit, right? Like the more we know, and like the power of that, I think is huge. But switching a bit to, I want to talk about the phenomenon going around, the whole, like the social media blowing up, cold therapy, cold plunging, that
Yeah.
whole, oh yeah. I feel as though you were an early taker in cold therapy and stuff like that, or cold immersion, or like just even just being exposed to it in general, especially in the water. Like I don't feel you just started doing that, like doing it. No, you were doing it before it was like cool to do, like to be cold.
I have some, you talk to my freshman year college roommates, you'd hear stories. So like I got really into cold water swimming, not immersion for the benefits, because I don't even know if they were known. So back in 2005,
20 years
I
ago.
just started wanting to, I was getting into marathon
Yeah.
swimming. One of the swims I was looking to do was, so I was swimming in the winters. I was going to the beach, February, March, and just doing the best I could do. And I was small. It was like 5'6", but I think I weighed like 125 pounds.
uh
So not a lot of weight.
yeah, not a lot of
Actually,
meat.
I would sleep with the windows open in the middle of the winter with ice packs under my, like lining the sides of my body just to like acclimate. Not recommending it, probably stupid in hindsight, but like I've
Yes.
been doing it since 2005, and
Yes.
it's just, and then like when I got more into like the channel swimming in like the past 5 or 6 years, I just started really enjoying it. And I really did it because my biggest fear, and the reason why most people don't finish these swims, is not distance, it's cold.
Yeah.
And it's not being prepared for. So in my head, it was kind of like that fear factor of, well, if I just got to find a way to control it. And if I train
Mm.
for it, I'll be okay. So like starting in,
Uh,
2015, 2016, I've been doing it for years. I've been doing winter swimming for years and ice swimming for years. But then I started making more of a concerted effort to do it, to control that fear of like, I'm not going to end this swim because I can't handle the cold. Like
right.
I'm going to do everything I can. So I literally got like a trash barrel from like Home Depot, like a small one, and like I would just like sit, like I would get all like really small and sit in it, throw ice in it, freezing cold water, leave it in my garage in the winter. It would ice over. I'd be like,
Yeah.
ice picking it and
Like
stuff, but
20
I would
years ago.
do it. I would just do it, and I'd sit in there
Amazing.
for 20, 30, 40 minutes, basically until I couldn't handle it anymore. And then, so that's why like I watch these people, I'm like, this is such bullshit, because I know you're sitting in there for maybe all of 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I would literally, there were times I was nervous. Like my wife would find me like unconscious in the cold tub because I've been sitting in like, 36-degree water for 20, 30, 40 minutes, just not moving.
How many
Like
degrees
just trying to
Celsius
handle the
is
cold.
that
What
roughly?
was that? Probably around 3 to 4.
Oof. Yeah.
So,
Okay.
so like, definitely like, so, but I watch the people now. I'm like, great. If you like it, awesome. But at the same time, I'm like, they're like, I swim year round, open water, no wetsuit, no
Yeah.
need. I literally wear a silicone cap, earplugs, goggles, and a Speedo. And like, if that's what you like doing, great, go do it. But like, I'll swim, and, there's a couple people who do like the immersion, and they literally walk in, stay in there like up to their shoulders for 30 seconds and walk out, and they wear like gloves and they wear boots. I'm getting in and I have nothing on other than
Yeah.
like earplugs and the cap. And I'm getting in and I'm swimming until I feel like, okay, this is a dangerous point that I'm not going to recover from. And then I run out of the water and I get in the car and I sit there and shiver for like 40 minutes to an hour trying to warm back up. And then eventually I'm
Amazing.
fine. So like, yeah, I watch it and I'm just like, you're all doing it for social media. Like
Yeah.
some of them aren't, but a lot of them are.
Yeah.
And it just kind of pisses me off. I'm like, do it for the right reasons. And this is like my big qualm. Look, you got to play the game. I'm on it because I have a coaching business.
Yeah.
And the only way people see you is through that.
Hmm.
And so like I play the game too. Like I'm not innocent. It has really been the worst thing to ever happen to sports and epic events ever. Like
Wow.
just takes away from it,
Yeah.
because you get these people who are like literally dipping for 20 seconds, like, oh, I sat here for 4 hours. Like, please, like, we know you didn't. So I just have a hard time,
Yeah.
with that. But people, I'm not trying to, heard this the other day and I hate it. I'm not trying to yuck someone's yum, but like if you're gonna do it right. right? Like I hate people who like half-ass it. Like
Yes.
do it right.
Yeah.
Do it for the right reasons, not
Right.
because you want like likes on your Instagram or your TikTok. Like just
Yeah.
do it right.
There was a video I saw. It was like 11 minutes of these two guys talking about ice bath and the benefit in cold plunge and stuff. And they like, yeah, I get it in for 3 minutes, get it in for 7, 11, whatever, right? Nothing crazy.
Yep.
Because I know the bare minimum they're saying is 11 minutes for like maximum or like minimum amount, like to see benefit, like long
Yeah.
term.
Yeah.
So people like they'll hit that number and then that's it. And the thing I read the first YouTube comment, right? Because it always shows one or two. The first one I read goes the hardest part, because they were talking for like 11 minutes, right? About like the difficulties of it. And they're like, this sucks about it, this sucks, this sucks. And the first comment I read was the hardest part actually, in fact, about cold plunging is not telling people that you cold plunge. And I thought it was the funniest thing ever, Craig. I like lost my mind. I was like, I gotta share this. So then I like because I do it, but like you wouldn't know.
Yeah. Good for you.
So
Great
yeah,
reasons.
thanks. Because I like it's nobody's business. Like who cares?
Yeah.
I'm sitting in a tub shirtless for 3 minutes,
Yeah.
right? It's
Like
it's
you know,
whatever.
it's great. I like the benefits, but honestly, like for me, doing it for no, I'm not like not, it's
Yeah,
not about you, but like for me, when I was training for the swims and just before that, it was always about pushing the limits.
right.
It was never about 11 minutes. It's like, no, get to 11 minutes, do 2 minutes more, do another minute, do another minute, do another minute. And if I like can't do it, because like if I start shivering in the water, I get out. Like that is a clear sign, got to get out. If so, you have to know the signs of hypothermia. You need to
Uh,
like if you're going to push limits, you need to know what to look for of like, all right, we are crossing a dangerous boundary
right.
because not every cold swim goes that way. I've gone ice swims, like 35-degree water, 36-degree water. There are sometimes my body's firing on all cylinders. I'll make it 15, 20 minutes, 25 minutes. There are
Yeah.
other days I get in and I know something is wrong. 2 minutes in, I get out. I was like, no, like something is not right. This is dangerous. I'm getting out. And like for me, it's always about pushing that limit, finding that like line and just getting over it a little bit. Not to the point that I'm going to die, but to a point that like, okay, this is like you said, this is, with your running, this is uncharted territory for me. How
Yeah.
am I going to respond? So,
Exactly. Yeah.
for me, it's like people are like, oh, how long are you sitting there? I'm like, well, when I started, 2, 3, 4 minutes. When I'm like, in peak training, 30, 40 minutes if I have to, it's for a purpose.
Yeah. Jeez, that's so long. That's incredible. Like good for you.
Yeah.
That's wild. That's like some people ask me, how long do you do it? I'm like, the other day I was like coming out of a cold and I was like in the ice bath and I was like shivering as I was entering it. And I was like, I'm already under the weather. All right. I was like, start the 2-3 minute timer or whatever. And I was like 30, 40 seconds in, I was like shivering. And I was shivering already because I was under the weather, but I just didn't know. So when
Yeah.
that clicked, I was like, oh, like warning lights went off. I was like, I really shouldn't hop in this right now. I should get out. But
Yeah.
I was like under the weather first, and it
Yeah.
just
It's not a good idea.
no, not at all. It's more of a heat only when you're sick. But
Yeah.
tell me a bit about your coaching business. When did you know, or when did you switch over, or not so much switch over because I know you'll still like do like endurance swim and stuff like that. But I'm curious, when did you first realize you're like, I'm gonna start coaching people. I think this would be a good route.
Yeah, when I was in college, like I would, when I came home for summers, I'd help coach on my former club team. And then I got into triathlon, and when that ended, like, well, not ended, but kind of it. I got hit by a car, and it took me out of commission for a while. But at that point, I was like, oh, like I had started a job at a company, and within 3 months, I knew this is not the career path for me.
Right.
So I literally I quit. I went back to school, got a master in exercise physiology. But while I was doing it, I started coaching because what I saw was I was like, there was a major gap between like what pool swimmers do, what master swimmers do, and what triathletes need to do, and like bridging that gap between the pool and the open water. So for me, where I had kind of been in both worlds a bit, that's when I decided to start coaching, and really it had nothing to do with marathon swimming. It was all getting people faster and ready for for open water swims, for triathlons, Ironman, half Ironman, sprint, whatever it was. And it was great because I was in the world. I was in transition. I was doing the races and stuff. So I was meeting a lot of people, finding out what people needed, started my own, my own coaching business, catering to that, where we did pool swims in the winter and then moved to the open water in the summer. And at the time, I was like the only program in my area doing it. It's not new. It wasn't novel. Like, I'm sure other companies in California were doing it, but in New England, the water's cold 10 months of the year. So it was like, harder to get people to want to do it. So started kind of bridging that gap. And then I started working with more and more and more people. It just kind of grew. And then as social media grew, I was racing, I was on the podium more. I just kind of got a pretty good following in terms of people who trusted what I was doing. Nice. I got all the certifications. I had experience in triathlon, in marathon swimming, in pool swimming, so I could help for every step of the process. And from there, I got fat, stopped doing triathlon after my car accident. Bike accident with a car. So after that, like, I just kind of was just focusing on coaching and working, and I got kind of lost. Like, I didn't have any goals. I had all these athletes I was helping with the English Channel and with an Ironman and doing cool stuff every week. And I was just sitting there getting fat. So I was like, all right, I got to do something. And that's ultimately what led me into marathon swimming. Like my revival of marathon swimming in my life. And that's when I started to decide I'm going to do Catalina. And then from there, I got into 20 bridges. I'm like, oh, then I was one away. I'm like, oh, I guess I might as well do the Triple Crown. But as I got deeper into the marathon swim world and started to understand like what was so great about it and what was so cool about it and what made it different and the appeal, I realized not a lot of people have experience coaching it. And having done it in college and then doing it again successfully, I still work with triathletes, but I've definitely shifted my focus more towards marathon swimmers because, and again, not yucking someone's yum, but if you think about the English Channel, right? There's been, I don't know what the numbers are, 17 to 2,000 people who have ever done it. When you think about Ironman, there are 1,700 people who do it every weekend. So what's cooler? The people, the 1,700 have done it over the history of the world or since it's been a thing, or the 1,700 people who do it every weekend. So again, not taking away from the achievement of people who train for Ironman. That is a huge sacrifice, huge achievement. I have not done Ironman. I've only done halves. But there's a reason only 1,700 people have successfully done it with a 50% attrition rate, or a 50% DNQ rate, which means 1,700 people who have done it, 5,000 may have attempted it. So, when you think of it like in those terms, you're like, okay, so like there's not a lot of people who have experience doing it and doing it well. So I wanted to get more into it. So I still work with triathletes, but I think my bread and butter at this point has shifted more towards the marathon swimming. And it's more like a mentorship than it is coaching because it's like all that we talked about. The mental training, the nutrition training, selecting a crew. It's not, training is easy. That's just getting in the pool and doing the work. It's all stuff around it that people don't know about, and giving people that information and being able to be part of those life-changing journeys. That's like what's super cool to me. And that's why I think I've really shifted my focus towards like people who want to do something not a lot have done. Like when Matthew came to me, he's like, I want to do this, I think at the time it was like, was it 250 kilometer? Like,
it was 350 around the island.
350 around. I'm like,
stupid.
Like, never done it before. Yeah. It was like in freezing cold water. I'm like, I haven't done a stage swim like this before, but let me pull in some extra resources because I don't want to steer you wrong. Pulled in a couple people that I trust in the marathon swim community, and we came up with a plan for him. And although the swim changed, I think what we provided him made him really successful at it, had a great experience. And, that's a connection I think he and I will always have. Like, even if we lose touch, we can always look back and be like, oh, I helped him do that. And he'll look at me like, oh, he helped me do that, and that's what's really cool. That's why I've shifted more towards that arena.
I like that. I like that a lot. Craig, do you have a maybe favorite coaching athlete story kind of thing? Like one, it could be like a thing you were a part of as a coach that, or is like one of your favorites or a memorable one, preferably positive, because I understand constructive is all.
So There was one swimmer, and it was actually the swimmer I coached the year before Matthew, who told Matthew to come to
Oh, no kidding.
yeah, to come work with myself. And she came to us. She's like, I think she gave me 12 weeks. And she's like, I'm doing Lake Ontario in 12 weeks. And this is where I'm at. And I'm like, we are a far cry from where we need to be. And I said, so again, this was like, I don't recommend this to anyone because part of the ramp plan is doing it safely.
Right.
And 12 weeks to go 30 plus miles is not ideal. She had doing some training before. She did a lot of things right. It wasn't like she was doing anything wrong. It was just the focus and the builds weren't where they needed to be. So she came 12 weeks ago, took me about a week or two to write the plan, pull in some resources, just to sanity check what I was doing. Because again, like my intention is to get everyone to the start line of the swim healthy and prepared to rock. And so that's why I wanted to pull in a few more resources. And basically, like me and this other guy pulled in, we had meetings like every 2 or so weeks with this girl. And, we were checking in constantly, like, where are you at? How are you feeling? Nice. And like, I watched her literally put every single thing aside. Like, this is the way, like, this is the athlete I've always wanted to coach.
Nice.
Like, they were committed the same way I was committed to my channel swims, because not everyone is. And she was like, I told her from the start, I'm like, your life for the next 10 weeks is going to be probably horrible. But she was coming, she had, she had like a lot of previous, like, not swimming experience. I mean, she was a swimmer, but like life things that were very difficult that made this look like a joke, which I think really probably benefited her in knowing, well, nothing will ever be as hard as what I went through, like in that time of my life.
Right.
But I watched her like put everything aside, get like literally every single long swim. No matter what challenge we threw at her, she did it. And then, day of the swim comes and she crushed it. She successfully swam the Ontario Lake with literally 12 weeks of training. Amazing. And it was like, I'm like, this is a 20 plus hour swim. And I'm watching I'm watching the tracker. I'm watching the Instagram, seeing where she's at. Like, like she's finishing and I'm like crying because I feel like I was part of that. Like that was such a big thing for, so many, like those 12 weeks. It was like, I had other swimmers and I was just as committed to them, but someone commits to their goal at that level, you are that much as a coach, that much more invested in their success.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it's like, they're giving me everything and then some, and I want to make sure I'm matching that energy, just like in jiu-jitsu, right? Like what, you match the energy of your partner. If they start, going hard, you're going hard. If they go harder, you go harder. So it's like the same thing there. It's like you're feeding off each other's energy. And I think that was probably like, not to take away, every swimmer I work with has had like cool parts.
No, absolutely.
That was like everything was stacked against us and we still got it done. And that's what made it so special.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's really cool. I like that. I like those stories. Those like, hey, we got all odds against us and we can still prevail. So that's really cool.
They make for a good book one day.
Yeah, you don't say. So with that, I'm curious, do you have any, like, what I want to know that I've kind of been thinking, especially like in preparation for this episode and what kind of drew me to you, with the many things you've done and things you've been like doing and like the hobbies and the studies and the work, do you have, that's what I'm wondering is, how do you manage to, like, when you pick something, do you feel like by picking it, you're not, like, you're putting something else aside and you can't focus on those goals? Or do you just like, I'm going to spend, this amount of time for this goal, this amount of time for this amount of time for this? Or do you just like, how do you manage to dive in and be obsessive over something is what I'm wondering.
Yeah. I mean, it just kind of happens, right? Like, like I said, you like doing things you're good at, but I don't only want to do things I'm good at, right? Like, that's why I started doing jiu-jitsu. That's why, me and my wife started doing tech diving. Like, we started with recreational diving. We really enjoyed it, but it wasn't challenging us. And we got kind of bored with, you just get bored. You're like, it's not exciting anymore. I like it, but what can I do to make it exciting again? And that's what happened with diving. Like, the recreational is great. We're not knocking it. We've seen awesome, we've swum with hammerheads and all different sharks and done all this really cool stuff. But then we're like, oh, we kind of want to go to the next level. So then we started doing tech diving and we're going to deeper depths and we started learning rebreathers,
Yeah.
and now we're toying with the idea of cave diving. Not obviously going through the proper channels, being certified probably, but for me, it's just like, I think life has so many different twists and turns.
Mhm.
And part of it is like, like right now, I'm not really 100% excited about swimming. So I'm giving myself that time to be away from the water, because I know at some point my life will get me back in the water, whether it's as a
Uh,
support swimmer for a big swim, or being a tandem
yeah.
swimmer, like another swimmer, or maybe it's doing my own channel at another channel at a certain point. But like right now, my head's not in it, which is nice because it gives me a chance to step
Yeah.
back, be like, all right, I can focus a little more on jujitsu, or I've been kind of toying with the idea of maybe I should be picking up an instrument, like maybe I should try guitar or something. Like I have not a creative bone in my cell in my brain, maybe bone in my body.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I shouldn't try
Interesting.
it. So I think for me, it's just about, as one thing leaves and loses interest in my life, I try to pick up something else and see where it takes me. And if
Yeah.
after a few months, if I'm not enjoying it, I'm not going to waste time. And that's ultimately what keeps,
That makes sense.
yeah. So for me, it's
Yeah.
just enjoyment.
That's fair to say. I think because I especially talk to like younger people, or like people even my age, like mid 20s or early mid 20s. Um, we have this issue with being patient, right? Like I'm like, if I don't compete in jujitsu, if I don't run like marathons, if I don't do like 90 of all these things, they all have to happen this year. You kind of get like, right? Like you kind of get like a bit like weird about this, or you get a bit stressed trying to like make time to fill all these things you want to achieve. It's nice to hear that's like, okay, you can still come back and focus because like life like brings you back there. Like you're not missing out completely if you
No.
just don't do one for a bit and don't. I don't know. I'm just trying to understand how to be a bit more patient, like for myself a little bit, but then for other people my age who might be like less aware of how to do that.
You got to ask why, right? Like,
Right.
why are you doing it? Why am I spending 20 hours a week swimming, or 15 hours, diving, or whatever it is? Like, it doesn't matter. It's, why am I doing it? Do I enjoy it? Why? And the problem is, as you get better, right? And this is, I think, the social media effect. Like, as you get better, people expect you to do bigger and bigger things, and then your value, your self-worth is tied to those achievements. So the only way you feel good is if you keep pushing the limits. And that's not how I think it should be, right? I think it should be more, I enjoy
Interesting.
it and I'm doing it for me. And I
Yeah.
don't care what anyone else thinks. And I think that's the point. And I think it comes with age, but that's the point I've gotten to where I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'm not, been doing jujitsu for 12 years and I'm still a purple belt. Like, doesn't mean anything. It just means like I came and go. I had channel swimming come up. I had to take off so I didn't get hurt, or, other things came into my life over jujitsu. And now jujitsu is something I'm really enjoying and pushing harder on. So, I think it's just about understanding why you're doing it and not getting in that trap of, well, everyone expects me to do bigger and better, and eliminating that self-value with that achievement. And I think you'll appreciate things a lot more.
Uh, I like the sounds of that, Craig. You just blew my mind there. That was interesting because that's found, yeah, like I was saying, right? That's something that I found, at least like I even struggle. So when you said it, I was like, I almost needed to hear somebody say that, even just to me. I was like, it's because you're right. Like it is the social media effect, especially with like people my age or younger, even who have it worse, or like if okay, well, I'm here, so I need to be. It's like, well, what's next? Okay, we do provincials. Okay, well, what's after provincials? Well, nationals. Like, okay, well, if we don't do that or we don't do better,
Mhm.
like there's almost like, did we truly get the most out of that?
Yeah.
And it's like if we're chasing that and then right, it's a weird construct that
Yeah.
like
And it's
happens in
hard
young
too,
people.
because as you get better, like for example, like think of your Instagram feed right now, or
Right.
TikTok, whatever
Sure.
young
Yep.
people do these days. As you get better, say jujitsu, for example, and I'm in the same thing. I'm only looking at people who are better at jujitsu than me.
Yeah, you're right.
And then
Yeah.
I'm only looking at swimmers doing major, major swims that I can't imagine doing, like 24-hour
Yeah.
swims, 48-hour swims, quadruple crossings. I'm only looking
Uh,
at, I'm not looking at where I came from. I'm not looking at where I started. I'm looking at what everyone else is doing. And I'm feeling like shit because I'm
uh,
not doing what they're doing. And I think I should be, when that is a completely self-imposed or like self-induced position.
right.
That's not real. Like,
No.
and I'm not even convinced these people
Uh,
like doing it. They just have
yeah.
always done it and are good at it, and they're in the same cycle that we're getting sucked into. So I think when I'm not saying get off
Hmm.
social media. I'm just saying, like, I think when you're able to tease those two things apart and you're doing it because you enjoy it and you don't care about like what's next, or you're not tying value to that next belt, that next competition, that next long swim, it gives you time to, like, be patient and try new things that yeah, you might not be good at them now, but who knows? Maybe trying, maybe I become an expert at the guitar. Like, who knows? I don't know. You don't know what you're going to do
Yeah.
because you took a step back from something that no longer gave you joy, but you're only doing because you felt you were supposed to do it.
Uh, I like that a lot. I like that answer a lot. That was yeah, well said. I think that's something that, well, I liked hearing, like I needed to hear, but I think a lot of people need to hear that a bit, like much more than I do. I think that's
It's
very,
what you get
very
when you become an old man, right?
that's what they tell me, like the age
Yeah,
and the wisdom thing.
you'll get there.
Yeah, one day. My fingers are crossed. I'm chasing that too, Rick. But yeah, so do you have with that a like a final overarching message or lesson or story or thing you want to leave behind for the audience before we conclude?
Hmm. I don't know if I can top my previous.
You don't
No
have to.
stories.
You could
What was
just you
that?
can you don't have to too, Greg.
No,
Like
no, no.
I'll
I'll
cut
think of
it
something.
to
I
something.
mean, I think ultimately it's, at least for me, and again, I haven't done everything perfect. I have regrets. Like, I think people need to, and not everyone, but like just in general, I found, like, personally for me, the times I'm most happy is when I don't care what other people think or expect me to do.
uh
And that's a really, really hard thing in our society, like where
Damn near
everything is
impossible.
on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and whatever, Visco. I don't even know what people use anymore. And it's just not getting caught up in that. I'm not saying get off social media, because I'm on it. Everyone's on it. I think it's entertainment. It's a nice
Mhm.
escape from your reality at
Yeah.
times, but I think ultimately you've got to find a way to detach your self-worth from what you're seeing and what people expect of you, and just do what makes you happy as long as it's not hurting people. It's the
I
open
like
caveat.
that.
Don't
Yeah.
hurt people.
That's fair. I like that. I like that a lot. So with that, where can people connect with you, work with you, find you, learn from you,
Yeah.
hear more of you?
So I on Instagram at the salty swimmer with a period between each, at the period salty, because I'm cranky because I'm an old man and I swim in salt water.
Yeah.
So salty swimmer. Instagram's cool. I think same thing on TikTok. And then my website's liquidtry.com.
Liquid
I
try.
like
Okay.
QUIDTRI.
I'll put all those in the description as well. So
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, and the thing is, like, my goal is just to impart as much information to people as possible, because ultimately swimming for me and coaching is a hobby, and any way I can help people achieve their goals, that's what ultimately, like, I like doing, and that's why I like coaching. So whether you want to sign up for, if someone's interested in doing a swim, like a big swim or whatever it is, like, reach out. And I always love talking about things you can do to help you get from where you are to achieving your epic goal. And, if you want to post on social media, you can do that.
awesome. Right on, Craig. So I really appreciate your time today. I really loved talking with you and I loved connecting with you. So I'm really grateful you're able to chat with me and the audience today. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Really fun. I appreciate having me on, and yeah, look forward to future episodes, listening,
Awesome.
seeing what stories I can learn from your other guests.
I love it. Thank you.